Welcome to EduRev.
Hello, my name is Harshmeet Singh and I've been teaching Indian Polity to UPSC Civil Services aspirants over the past 5 years across the country. In this video, I will be discussing with you the Government of India Act 1935 and the events that happened after the Government of India Act 1935 till the time of India's independence. I sincerely hope that you have watched the earlier videos of this video series so that it becomes clear to you how we arrived at this position. Let's begin with the Government of India Act 1935. Now, ये act was one of the most important acts introduced in the history of India for various reasons. In fact, abhi bhi, right now, the Indian constitution that we have today, many parts of that constitution have been derived from the Government of India Act 1935. 1935 से 1947 तक when the Constituent Assembly came and they started to function. In fact, 1950 तक when the Constitution first started, India was being governed for these 15 years by this act only. It was the longest act passed by the British Parliament at that time. It was a humongous act. So, we will discuss the provisions one by one and I will also keep on telling you इसमें से क्या आपको याद करना है क्या नहीं. Because at the end of the day, what matters is what questions can you solve and how many questions can you solve correctly to get through to the examination. The first point was the act had two parts. First was the Government of India Act 1935 and the second part was Government of Burma Act of 1935. So administration of Burma, which today you call Myanmar, was separated by this particular act. The other important point was the concept of diarchy, which I had told you in detail in the 1919 Act in the last video. In the 1919 Act, the concept of diarchy was introduced at the provinces. That was now transferred at the center. So remember, diarchy was taken away from the provinces, transferred to the central government in this particular act. The most important provision of this act, however, was the idea of an all India federation. Now, I want you to understand this very, very carefully. The India of that time had two kinds of territories. The entire India was not under the British. Most parts of India were under British, but there were some parts of India which were under they were called princely states. They were under their own rulers. So whatever law the British introduced, 1919 Act, 1909 Act, 1833 Act, it was all applicable only to British India, not to princely states. In the princely states, on the other hand, they had their own laws, they had their own customs. Although they respected the British, although the British controlled them indirectly, but they had their own autonomy. Now, for the first time ever, British introduced the idea of all India federation, meaning that there should be one single country, one single center, which shall govern over the entire country. So, if there would be one single government which will make laws for the entire country. So, there would not be any other rulers, there would not be rulers having their own laws or their own customs. Now, everyone would be a part of one single country. That was the idea of all India federation. An interesting idea, but it never came into being. वो हुआ ही नहीं. क्यों नहीं हुआ? The simple reason was the princely states से उनको option दिया गया था. They were given an option: do you want to be a part of this all India federation or do you not want to be a part of this all India federation? Now, obviously, जब आप princely states को option दोगे कि आप अपना पूरा राज घराना छोड़ के या फिर उसको गवर्नमेंट के अंडर लाना चाहोगे कि नहीं, obviously most of the princely states did not accept that. Why would they want to give up their power and come under one common government when they can have their own rule in their own areas without anyone to answer? That is why, because it was voluntary, it was optional for them to join the federation, most of the princely states refused to join it. And because they refused to join it, the All India Federation never came into being. Because the act said for the federation to come into being, All India Federation बनाने के लिए two conditions were necessary to be fulfilled. The first condition, number of seats in the Council of States, जो upper house है, number of seats in the Council of States जो princely states को दी गई थी वो थी कुल मिला के total 104. At least half of these seats should be filled by the princes who say yes. तो जिन जिन prince ने हाँ करा है, एटलीस्ट 52 सीट्स उनके हिस्से की होंगी, तब जाके वो फर्स्ट कंडीशन विल बी सेटिस्फाइड. The second condition, at least half of the population of Indian states, at least half of the population of the princely states would say yes. तो जिन जिन princely states ने हाँ किया है उनकी population should be at least half of the population of all the princely states combined. Only when these two conditions shall be fulfilled, जब ये fulfill होगा, only then the All India Federation would come into being. And as I said, because it was voluntary, princely states and join in nahi kiya. Because it did not join, these conditions were never fulfilled. Diarchy at the center, which I just told you, diarchy at the provinces was an idea of 1919 Act, but diarchy transfer at the center was done by the Government of India Act of 1935. Then at the center government level, we had two houses, bicameralism, which was introduced by 1919 Act itself. The upper house called the Council of States and the lower house called the Federal Assembly. The Council of States, which was the upper house, it was a permanent body, much like our Rajya Sabha today. 1/3 of its members retired every third year. It had 260 members, 156 from British India, 101 from princely states, and the remaining from the Chief Commissioner provinces, which was similar to the Union territories. As I told you in the earlier video also, as a teacher, I would not advise you to remember all these numbers of members because these will get very confusing. What you can remember is the tenure of the houses, the tenure of the lower house and the tenure of the upper house. That would be good enough. Then, out of the 156 members from British India, 150 were elected on a communal basis. So seats were reserved or for women, for minorities, for depressed classes, Hindus, Muslims, Sikh. So the seats were reserved on the basis of the religion, on the basis of the background that the people came from. Seats are also reserved for Europeans, Anglo-Indians, Indian Christians, etc. Now here is the most important part which you need to remember. The seats were divided amongst the states not on the basis of population as they are usually done, as they are done today also. They were not on the basis of population. For example, today, if a state has more population, it is given more seats in Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. But that was not the case at that time. At that time, the seats were divided for the states on the basis of their importance. The more important a state was, the more seats the state was given, and not on the basis of the population. Subjects were divided between center and the states. The states, which are called the provinces at that time, also had considerable amount of power. As most of you would know, today in the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution, we have 3 lists: the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. Similarly, at that time, we had the federal list, which was the union list, the provincial list, and the concurrent list. You don't have to remember the number of subjects, but just remember your union list has the most subjects, then the state list comes at second, and the concurrent list has the least number of subjects. Also remember, residuary powers were given to the viceroy. This is very, very, very important. What are residuary powers? Residuary power means any subject, कोई ऐसा subject जो तीनों की तीनों list में ना हो. Any subject which is not given in any of the 3 lists. Right now, आज के time के हिसाब से residuary powers are with the Parliament of India. मतलब कोई ऐसा subject है जो तीनों में से किसी list में नहीं है, उस पर Parliament law बनाएगा. But in the Government of India Act 1935, उसमें क्या लिखा था? According to that act, residuary powers are with the viceroy. तो कोई subject अगर कहीं भी नहीं लिखा है, उस पर viceroy or the Governor General will make the law. Okay. Then India Council was abolished. We have studied about India Council in the 1858 Act, how a 15-member council was appointed to assist the Secretary of State for India. इसको हटा दिया गया अब. Extension of franchisee, more people were now allowed to vote. About 10% of our population got the right to vote. But still there was no dominion status. Now what is dominion status? Dominion status means internal independence would be given. For example, internally India can make its own laws, they can make their own constitution. But outside of India, they will still be dependent upon the British. किसी बाहर की country से relation उनके British के through ही होंगे. They can't go on a war, they can't maintain international relations with any other country. So they would still come under the British Queen, but internally they would be independent. This was the dominion status. Interestingly, Simon Commission said that dominion status will be given to India. But the Government of India Act did not say anything about the dominion status. That is why the Congress and most of the leaders were obviously not happy with it. Jawaharlal Nehru very famously called this act all brakes, no engine. These kind of quotes are also asked in the IAS prelims examination. So remember this. Nehru said this quote about the Government of India Act 1935. Now, after the Government of India Act 1935, till the time of our independence, a lot of events happened. As I said earlier also, these events will be discussed in great detail, in great length in your modern history classes. Modern history में आप सबके बारे में पढ़ोगे because this is a part of a modern history. But still, I'll give you a very brief idea about what was happening in these events so that you can connect the dots और आपको पता चल जाए independence से पहले हुआ क्या. 1939 में the World War II began. अब जब World War II शुरू हुआ तो British needed India's support. They needed Indian soldiers to come and work for them, to come and fight for them. Congress is against it. Congress said, no, we will not ask our people, we will not ask our soldiers to go and fight for you. इसीलिए ब्रिटिश और अंडर सो मच प्रेशर कि अब हमें किसी तरह से इंडिया का सपोर्ट लेना है. नॉट जस्ट ब्रिटिश, द कंट्री विच आर फाइटिंग विद द ब्रिटिश सच एज द यूएस ने ब्रिटेन को बहुत बार कहा इंडिया को जो चाहिए उन्हें दो, बट ब्रिंग देम टू वर्ल्ड वॉर. व्हाई? फर्स्ट, इंडियाज soldiers had fought very, very courageously in the World War I. So everyone knew Indian soldiers had a lot of talent. Secondly, we had a big army. There were a lot of people in India who were ready to fight, who were ready to join the military because of a government job. So British wanted Indians to fight. But Congress was not in favor of it. Congress को वो नहीं पसंद. Now, because British wanted the Congress happy and they wanted Indians to come and support them, they started giving us offers one by one. The first offer that the British gave was called the August offer, came in the month of August in 1940. It was just before Germany started to air raid or started to attack Britain by planes. Under this offer, the British had offered us that once the war is over, war khatam hone ke baad, the representative body of Indians will be made to frame the new constitution. Now, Congress was obviously not happy with it. They wanted something to be done right now. They were not happy with any assurances to be given later. So it was obviously rejected. In 1942 came the Cripps Mission. The Cripps Mission similarly said that we will make you a constitution and Indians will make their own constitution. We will not interfere. But right now you have to take part in the war with us. After that, once the war is over, then we will see what can we do. Mahatma Gandhi very famously called it a post-dated check in a crashing bank. Again, a quote which is important for a prelims examination. This was followed by the Quit India movement because Mahatma Gandhi and other Congress leaders felt this was an opportune time to launch another mass movement. Quit India movement also is called a leaderless movement. Why leaderless? Because as soon as the Congress announced that we were launching the Quit India movement, almost all the Congress leaders were arrested. Overnight, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, every main Congress leader of that time was arrested, but the movement did not stop. Common people carried on with the movement. There were people who were helping the movement by underground activities. They were not coming out in the open. Usha Mehta, for example, became very famous for launching an underground secret radio. There was Ram Manohar Lohia. There was other people who were fighting. There was JP Jayaprakash Narayan. All these people became very famous and they kept on bringing the movement forward. In 1946 came the Cabinet Mission Plan. Now, Cabinet Mission Plan is very, very important. Cabinet Mission Plan for the first time clarified that we cannot have a separate Pakistan. So it said that partition is not possible because it is not feasible to divide two countries. How will you divide your army? How will you divide your railway lines? How will you divide your infrastructure? Pakistan will be created into two parts, so that's just not possible. Cabinet Mission Plan finally said that okay, Constituent Assembly will be formed, and it gave a plan for the Constituent Assembly. It said that India's Constituent Assembly will have 389 members, 296 would come from British India, and remaining 93 would come from the princely states. And on the basis of the Cabinet Mission Plan, finally elections were held in July 1946 for India's Constituent Assembly to make our constitution. This is a very, very important fact. Our Constituent Assembly was elected on the basis of which plan? The Cabinet Mission Plan. So do remember this also. After this, the final act that came from the side of the British was the Indian Independence Act of 1947. This was introduced after Mountbatten Plan had come into being on 3rd of June 1947, which officially said that India will be divided into two parts, India and Pakistan. The partition was now official, and the act said there would be two dominions now, India and Pakistan. Boundary was carved between the two by Sir Cyril Radcliffe, who was invited from Britain. Partitions happened in two places. As you would know, there were two Pakistans that were created: West Pakistan, which you call Pakistan today, and East Pakistan, which you call Bangladesh. Punjab was partitioned and Bengal was partitioned. Boundaries were demarcated. Pakistan now comprised of west part of Punjab, east part of Bengal, territories of the Sindh, northwest frontier provinces, Sylhet division of Assam, Bhavalpur, Khairpur, Baluchistan, and 8 other princely states of Baluchistan. The British control over the princely states ended, and the princely states in India were free to join. They were given an option by Mountbatten. If you want, you can join India. If you want, you can join Pakistan. Or the third option that was given to them was, if they want, they can remain independent of the two. Both of them were given Governor Generals to begin with. The Act also said that a common Governor General can be given if they both agreed, but that was not the case. So India had Mountbatten as the Governor General who continued for India, and Jinnah became the Governor General of Pakistan. Constituent assemblies were created for both. So India's Constituent Assembly was now cut short. It originally had 389 members, but after division, India's Constituent Assembly now officially had 299 members. A new Constituent Assembly was created for Pakistan for making Pakistan's own constitution. As I said earlier also, till the time that our constitution came into being, India was governed by the Government of India Act 1935. If the Governor General wanted, he was allowed to make any changes in that act. Also, the Indians who were working as civil servants before the date of our independence continued to remain in service, and they were given the same privileges when Indian government started to function. This brings us to the end of chapter number 1 of Indian polity, and India finally achieved independence. There are a couple of questions based on how UPSC asks questions from these topics. This is a question about Government of India Act 1935. You can take 20-25 seconds and go through this question and see if you can answer them. First, the princely states were also part of the proposed All India Federation. Second, most of the items fell into the provincial list. And third, the residuary powers were under the Viceroy. Now, first is obviously correct. The All India Federation that was proposed would have British India and the princely states. Second is incorrect. As I said earlier also, you don't need to remember the number of items, but just remember federal list or the union list. These are the same things. They had the most items. Then the provincial list had items, and then the third and the least number of items were in the concurrent list. So second statement is incorrect. Third statement is residuary powers were under control of the Viceroy. This is absolutely correct. So C is the correct option. Statement second is incorrect. You can make a note of it if you want. There's one more question which I just discussed a couple of minutes back. Who had the residuary powers under Government of India Act 1935? Again, just a reminder, residuary powers means powers on those subjects which are not mentioned in any of the three lists. Right now, currently, it is with the Parliament of India, but the question is asking about the Government of India Act 1935. At that time, the residuary powers were in the Governor General or the Viceroy, which we have just discussed. So the answer here is B. As you would know, EduRev Infinity is a platform which has more than 10,000 high quality questions prepared by UPSC experts themselves. who have cleared the UPSC examination and are serving the government of India at very high positions right now. You can join the platform to take advantage of all these high quality questions. Thank you so much for watching this video.